Robby, what's on your radar?
So today I wanted to share a story of the struggles of one particular woman because they present an extreme version of the difficulties so many have suffered for the last 2 years. Melissa Henderson is a single mother of 5 who lives in Blairsville, Georgia. In May of 2020, the pandemic forced the daycare center she relied upon to close. But like so many working people, she still had to go to work. So she relied on her oldest daughter, Lindley, age 14, to babysit the other kids. Lindley was concentrating on her own schoolwork, virtually of course, when the youngest kid, 4-year-old Thaddeus, noticed his friend, a neighboring kid, playing outside. So Thaddeus, wearing only a shirt, unfortunately, clambered outside to play. 10 or 15 minutes later, Lindley realized he was missing, guessed where he was, went to the neighbor's house to retrieve him. Unfortunately, the neighbor's mom had called the police. Now Henderson is facing criminal reckless conduct charges for letting her 14-year-old babysit. The charges carry a maximum penalty of 1 year in prison and a fine of $1,000. That's according to reporting from my colleague at Reason magazine, Lenore Skenazy. Lenore is the founder of the free-range kids movement, which seeks to restore sanity to debates about proper parenting. Lenore believes stressed-out parents are over-policed, too often punished by the government when they allow their kids to have some level of basic autonomy. A generation or two ago, it wouldn't have been uncommon at all for parents to let their kids, even their young kids, play outside by themselves or be taken care of by other older siblings. Now it's considered neglect and often a crime, even though the outside world has not gotten any more dangerous for kids. It's gotten less dangerous. Henderson's case is a perfect example. The arresting officer, Deputy Sheriff Mark Pilote, wrote in his report that anything terrible could have happened to Thaddeus, including being kidnapped, run over, or, quote, bitten by a venomous snake. It was in the report. When Henderson protested that the kid was only gone a few minutes, Pilote responded that a few minutes is all the time a venomous snake needs. Here is a photo of the busy street and jungle-like conditions Thaddeus faced. Now, that's his buddy's home on the right, photographed by Henderson from her porch. As you can see, their neighborhood is hardly the Australian outback. Nevertheless, the case has dragged on for the last 2 years as Henderson's attorney tries to get the case thrown out on the grounds that she made a perfectly understandable and defensible parenting decision. And in fact, Georgia's own Child Protective Services guidance says 13 is an acceptable age for babysitting. Part of the reason the authorities are coming down hard on her is that she was being previously investigated. When Thaddeus broke loose one other time in the past, the Department of Children and Families let her off with a warning, but this time the responding officers thought the government just had to take action. And action they took. 5 cop cars eventually came to her house. They handcuffed Henderson, they took her to the county jail, and they booked her. I almost don't have words for how low it made me feel, she told my colleague Lenore. To truly feel in the bottom of my heart that, if I'm anything, it's a good mother and everything you do is for your kids. To be stripped of that to the point where you are handcuffed in front of them. Henderson also noted that her daughter, the babysitter, has a GPA of 4.4, is vice president of the 4-H club, broke school records in varsity track, completed the Red Cross childcare program, and is certified in CPR. There's a GoFundMe for the family if anyone is interested in contributing. This is just one family story, but we know that so many have struggled during the pandemic because of the completely unreasonable demands placed on working parents. Some of these stresses were unavoidable. Others were the result of government policies that could have been different. But at the very least, the authorities should not add to families' miseries by arresting and prosecuting them for relying on a 14-year-old babysitter in a pinch. Come on.
So for me and for the viewers who are like gobsmacked at the details of the case, how long was the kid gone? And
10 minutes.
And a 13-year-old was?
A 14-year-old.
A 14-year-old.
Was babysitting. It's the oldest daughter was babysitting the other kids.
That's a crime?
This happens all the time.
I thought you could pay a 14-year-old.
But it's the neglect is leaving, the child was left unsupervised outside. So that's the aspect of it that's a crime. So this is a crime, and it shouldn't be. And this happens all the time, and the laws are unevenly enforced. But my colleague, Lenore Skenazy, you should look at, she has one of these kinds of stories, every week or every month. Often it's low income, working class. This happened to be a single mother. This was a white family. Often it's a minority family that over-policed, as you know that they are. They are crazy. Cases where parents say, oh, just go play at the park, a park where there's lots of kids playing, there are other parents around, the kid is 6, 7, or 8.
I may not know a family that does that all the time.
Yeah.
But
you can go to jail.
Not.
You can go to jail. I don't know exactly. It's different in every state. some states have, and Lenore, my colleague, it has an advocacy organization that is fighting to change the laws in every state so that it is clear, so there's no pretext, there's no excuse for like a really nosy neighbor and a really, cop who's just determined to make your day miserable.
Neighborly disputes get vicious.
Exactly.
And so, because one of the most profound things Trump ever said is, he said, he hates him as much as you hate your neighbor.
But these CPS, Child Protective Services, administered at the state level, so it's different in every state. Some are better, some are worse. Lenore and I edit Lenore's work for our magazine, so I edited this story. The abuses we have seen are some of the most horrific, and you know what? In some cases, there are cases of abuse. It does happen, but there are even cases of abuse where you say these parents are not doing a good job, and the kid is not being well taken care of. But still, taking the kid away, as often happens, the kid is taken out of this home, separated from their other siblings, placed in a foster care environment that is often just as abusive, if not more abusive. Right. And this is in the kid's best interest. You're saying this kid has been neglected, and your solution is to lock the parents in prison and move the kid elsewhere. It's like crazy stuff. The CPS system is really insane, and it can happen to perfectly good parents who are making reasonable choices. Like, it didn't even used to be a thing. Our parents, or now our grandparents' generation, the kids would disappear all day. If they made it back home by supper, they would get supper. If they didn't, they didn't, and that was that. And it was far more dangerous out in the world than it is now.
Yeah, I was a latchkey kid starting in first grade, and it was like a mile and a half to walk home, and then later, when I was in this bigger town of like 5,000 people, I'd walk all the way across town to where my mother's work, and then, or sometimes I'd take the bus home, and would just be outside until the sun went down.
Yep, In exactly that case,
and then she would get home from work.
Parents have been arrested in exactly that case. Latchkey kids, kids who make it home on their own. Maybe the key to the house is in the mailbox or something. They let themselves in.
Our house.
Maybe they go play in the backyard. Neighbor spots them playing by themselves in the backyard, calls the police. CPS gets involved. Parents arrested.
Is there any momentum for the pushback for the free range movement?
Yeah. So they have
changed. Which direction is this heading?
I think it's getting better. They've managed to change the law in several states. I think Utah, Arizona, I might have it's states like that. Western states, often with a kind of independent spirit, are changing the rules. So that's good. It really is it's something more people ought to be aware of. And again, this can happen. It's just like any police issue. Disproportionately, it impacts people who are struggling, people who are minority, people who have less economic means. But it does happen to everyone. Rich parents who just let their kids go on a walk by themselves. The wrong neighbor sees, cops called, life wrecked. So watch out for that.
Yikes.
Watch out for that.
Good looking out. Our rising panel is up next. Stick around for that.